This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. You know, there's a T-shirt that Roger Stone, that individual who dragged the president down, committing 7 felonies, used to wear, which said, Roger Stone did no wrong. I think maybe I need some T-shirts that say Larry Klayman is always right, because I have been right. And in my book, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Dynasty, I predicted what was going to happen with regard to this Supreme Court so-called review of the massive fraud that occurred in the 2020 presidential elections. Sure enough, the Supreme Court, as I predicted, did not take the case. The only judges who stood up, and I should say justices, were Justice Thomas and Justice Alito. And the justices which the president has bragged about appointing, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett, shot it down. Now, why did they shoot it down? And why is basically the election over at this point in time? They shot it down. Let's talk about Barrett, because she was accused of, in effect, court packing by the Republicans, by the Democrats, putting her on the bench in the event there was an election challenge. She ran away from that challenge because she is part of the establishment. And that's the sad part of it. Same for Gorsuch. Kavanaugh, since he was beaten up in his confirmation hearings with regard to allegations of sexual abuse, has gone left. He's only slightly right of center now, and he's afraid that he could be impeached again or retaliated against if he acts. These Supreme Court justices, and notwithstanding Justice Roberts, where there's been rumors for many years is a closet gay, in his generation, they don't want that out. He's married. Are they blackmailing him with that, or is there something else as well? Probably. Because in Washington, D.C., it's mutual assured destruction. Everyone has dirt on everybody else. Everybody wants to be part of the Senate club. Trump was never part of that club. I'm not just talking about the Senate club, but all clubs. And of course, now they have taken collectively the president down. And who else was proven wrong in making predictions? Of course, you know, many of you hear me in my daily podcast. You think perhaps that I'm acting unfairly with regard to Sean Hannity and people like Mark Levin. You know, the great one, according to Hannity, Mark Levin. Well, the great one and Hannity selling false hope, as usual, to boost ratings, to boost advertising dollars, to boost salaries. They were wrong, too. And I have to point these things out because, you see, it's important for the American people to have the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And don't think about what's going to happen in Georgia either. I'll make another prediction. I would say 60% the Democrats take Georgia because of the odor that has been created by the left-wing media with regard to these election challenges. That will be used against the Republicans. They never stood up for the president to begin with, and now the Republicans down there in Georgia, the true Republicans, are fed up, and they probably won't even go to the polls. But even if the Republicans were to retain control of the Senate and say they could block certain pieces of legislation by the radical leftists that are now about to infest the administration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that's not a be-all and end-all. McConnell is a sleazy political hack, the majority leader of the Senate, and he would sell the president out for any basis at all if it could suit him. or his family. You know who his wife is? Elaine Chao. Elaine Chao has links to communist China. Her father has links to the Politburo. McConnell took money from John Wang, the Chinagate scandal that I helped ignite in the late 1990s. John Wang, a communist Chinese spy that was inserted in the Clinton administration. McConnell took money from Wang, lined up by Elaine Chao. So this is what you're dealing with in Washington, D.C. And I have to say, perhaps God has a plan. He always has a plan. And it may be to get the people to rise up. I believe that it is. Because right now, we have no government. And I'll give you an example of how we have no government. Blowhard Bill Barr, the Attorney General, who I also call Puxatawny Bill, because he hides under his desk, much like the groundhog in Puxatawny, Pennsylvania, runs into his hole nearly every February 2nd. Bill Barr took a dive. He said he was going to do it. The Bidens were off limits. He never told anybody that there was even a pre-existing investigation of the massive bribery scheme of Joe and Hunter Biden and the entire family, including Joe Biden's brother, with regard to China, Ukraine, and Russia. He buried that leading up to the election. Of course, he's also taken a dive with regard to indicting Comey, to indicting Clapper, to indicting Brennan, the Lovebirds, Bruce Orr, the Obamas, the Clintons, and of course, the Bidens. He too is part of that Washington Republican establishment. And that Republican establishment is little different than the Democrat establishment. It's a game. They play the game. They go on cable TV, whether it's Fox News or MSNBC or the Communist News Network, CNN. They raise money. They boost their standing. They get reelected, where they get put in higher positions, as the case of Barr, and they sell their interests of the people that supported them out. This should be a lesson for President Trump, because the people he put around him and took advice from, in large part, helped take him down. Not Kellyanne Conway, not Stephen Miller, not a few others, but most of them. And you could see with these judges that he appointed to the Supreme Court threw him under the bus: Barrett, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch. And of course, we have the pre-existing problem of Chief Justice Roberts, the most dishonest of all. I predicted all of this. I was right. And I don't gloat the fact that I was right, because I hoped that the president would prevail and win, but I knew that he would not, because the judiciary has become highly corrupt. And we know that. And that was predicted by Thomas Jefferson. And that's why I say go out and get my book. It Takes a Revolution. Forget the scandal industry. Jefferson predicted, and he was against federal judges and justices that would be appointed, they think, for life. They're not really. The Constitution says they serve only for good behavior. But as I point out in my book, only 8 have been impeached in 244 years, about 1 every 31 years. And they're unelected, unaccountable to the people. Jefferson predicted because of that, they would become despots and tyrants. And ultimately, the blood of patriots would have to be shed again, as it was in 1776 and thereafter. And then he said, what's a few thousand dead to refresh the tree of liberty? Well, he didn't want to see anybody dead or die, and neither do I. And that's why I wrote this book. It Takes a Revolution. Forget the scandal industry. It now should be the #1 book on the New York Times bestseller. Of course, forget about the New York Times. They're part of the problem, a big part of the problem, in that they brainwashed the American people. But I don't want you to be brainwashed, and that's why you need to read my book. And before that, read the Declaration of Independence and the column I wrote this week on WND.com that you can find at freedomwatchusa.org, as well as my daily podcasts. Education is extremely important because the American people have been misled by the likes of Hannity and Mark Levin and others. You know, Levin's very smart. Hannity's not. I give him credit for being smart. But they all play the game. And it was interesting because last night I turned on Hannity just to see his reaction. There was a advertisement before his show saying, the election's not over, major breaking news. That obviously was recorded before the Supreme Court shot down President Trump's challenge. But when I turned Hannity on, it was a different story. He looked very sullen, very chastened. He realized that he had a pie thrown in his face and that his credibility is now down to ground zero. And so is Mark Levin's and the others who purvey this false hope to boost ratings. Well, now is not the time, and that's the subtitle of my book. Forget the scandal industry on cable news. Forget Newsmax as well. Newsmax, Chris Ruddy, who's the CEO, is just playing the game right now. He gave $1 million to the Clinton Foundation. Now he claims to be the Trump News Network. Well, you know what? Now there is no Trump. So where's he going to go now? Back to being the sleazy leftist in closet that he is? This is something that needs to be addressed because education, as well as strong action, is important to bring this country back. The truth, and nothing but the truth. And in my book, one of my proposals, as I've said, is that we now need to take the legal system into our own hands. The legal profession, I can tell you, last Monday, December 7th, was the 43rd anniversary, ironically, of my being sworn in to the bar. I can tell you, and that's Pearl Harbor Day, by the way, quite prophetic. I can tell you after 43 years that the legal profession is the most dishonest and corrupt legal profession, I don't mean legal profession, it's illegal profession in the United States. It's a disgrace. And when Trump ran around crowing that he appointed 600 judges, I've been in front of 9 of them so far. 9. They all lack courage. They run for the exits. They are afraid of their shadow. And this is the country we live in. So it is time to wage a peaceful and legal revolution, to rise up. We have nobody there. There is no political messiah. Trump is gone. At best, he's a mouthpiece going forward. I'll be back with the second segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. But until then, take this to heart. Let's get to work. We need to wage a new American revolution.
Fearless.
He's Klayman, he's crazy, he's racist, he's out to kill the Democrats.
Dangerous.
You don't care, he uses the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special Prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Let's now talk about the principal proposal that I make in It Takes a Revolution, citizens' grand juries. I commissioned a citizens' grand jury under Freedom Watch, and we sought the indictment of Special Counsel Robert Mueller for attempting to suborn perjury, for trying to coerce and obstruct justice with regard to my brave and valiant client, Dr. Jerome Corsi. Corsi was threatened with prosecution and, in fact, a life sentence because he's in his mid-70s if he did not lie about Russian collusion and implicate President Donald Trump. Corsi was strong. He stood up to Mueller. He hired me. We fought back. We sued Mueller for civil rights violations, for violation of grand jury rules, and also violation of his privacy rights, illegal surveillance. We also filed a criminal complaint against Corsi and against Mueller and his prosecutors. And we prevailed. We fought the so-called law, which was not law at all. They were outlaws, and we won. If the president had done the same thing, and he had very bad legal advice going up to the very end of his demise, which occurred last Friday at about 6 p.m. Eastern time, he perhaps could have won too. But a confluence of factors dragged him down. Not just the left-wing media, the vicious left-wing media, not just the evil Democrats that would try anything and do anything and lie about anything to drive him and conservatives out of control of this country, but also people that were with him, people like Roger Stone, people like Paul Manafort, people like Michael Cohen, others that dragged him down. He hung around bad people. And there's an old expression that when you hang around excrement, you're going to start to smell like it. Of course, I've cleaned that up a little bit, that quote. And that's what happened. And then the president himself offended a lot of people that he didn't need to do in the middle, that really were uneducated, didn't know how to vote. And of course, then on top of that, there was the massive election fraud and his hapless, worthless lawyers didn't know how to deal with the legal aspect of it. But you know what? They wouldn't have succeeded anyway, in reality, because these judges, these highly politicized federal judges in particular, are compromised and corrupt. And now you can see even the Supreme Court, and of course his Attorney General is worthless, blowhard Bill, who simply protects himself and is willing to throw the president to put him in office under the bus, as well as his new Supreme Court justices, Kavanaugh, Barrett, and Gorsuch. Every man for himself in Washington, D.C. It's not a swamp, it's a cesspool. And they're very happy to continue on because, as I've said many times, the wealth in Washington continues to mount. They mount power. They're part of this inner circle club, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or whatever, whether you're a Supreme Court justice or lower court justice. My formerly favorite federal judge, Royce Lambert, plays cards with John Roberts. I know, because he told me. Lambert claims to be a conservative. Roberts is no longer conservative. Hey, we can play cards. We can drink. We can have merry fun, whatever. Well, you know what? There's no fun left in this country. The only thing that's left is to wage a second American Revolution. And we can do that with citizens' grand juries. We can start it. We have the right, as Justice Scalia wrote in 1992 in a case called United States versus Williams, because the grand jury belongs to the people, not the other three branches of government, that we can impanel grand juries. We can put the criminals in front of the grand juries. We can try them. We can fry them. We can sentence them. And as I write in my book, we even have the right of citizen's arrest, which we would seek to mete out peacefully and legally. And we need to show the American people that it's time to rise up. Like in the Old West, Wyatt Earp, we hold our destiny in our hands. I ask you to watch a trailer of Wyatt Earp by Kevin Costner, and I'll be brief here. And I'm not advocating violence, but in the beginning of that movie, as the trailer shows, young Wyatt is in the cornfields and he's leaving to go to Civil War with his brothers, Morgan and Virgil. And his dad says, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm going to join my brothers." He says, "No, you're not." He says, "You're not ready for it." But I want to tell you, when you are ready for it, I want you to know one thing. There are a lot of evil people in this world. And when you confront them, shoot first and shoot to kill. Now, I'm not advocating to kill anybody, peaceful and legal, but we have to take the offense, just like Wyatt Earp. We have to mete out justice ourselves, peacefully and legally. And that's the message for today, is that Larry Klayman was right. You have to start listening more carefully to what I'm saying. Not the clowns that are on Fox News, not the people that are boosting their egos and boosting their advertising dollars and boosting their standing. But listen to yourself and listen to the Father and his Son, because he's with us if we help ourselves. I'll be right back with more about why we have to wage a revolution.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
There was news this week that my alma mater, the corrupt Justice Department, the Justice Department that represents the special interests, the establishment hacks of both political parties, that is afraid of its shadow currently. But I can assure you, once Biden and Harris take over and they put their guy in, who's apparently going to be Doug Jones. Remember Doug Jones? He is the ultra-leftist hack that ran against my client, Chief Justice Roy Moore in Alabama for the Senate seat back in 2017. Doug Jones perpetrated the lie that my client, a very fine man, Roy Moore, Justice Roy Moore, is a pedophile. He's not a pedophile. When he was in his early 30s, he went out with younger women, and that was it. That is not a crime. And then we can talk about Eric Swalwell later on in this segment and the Chinese spy that he was obviously sleeping with, this clown, the dumbest white man in Congress. But Doug Jones, let's get back to him. because the Justice Department will soon be run by him. The Justice Department will be used by the radical left, which will inhabit the Biden administration. They will use that to purge the country of any opposition. Conservatives, people of faith, libertarians. You can expect they'll do that in conjunction with the IRS and other government agencies. Once these leftists take control of this country, they will never peacefully and legally give it back. It will be like the Bolshevik Revolution, where the White Russians and the Red Russians started to fight with each other, like in Iran, where the Ayatollahs and the Mujahideen fought with each other for control. Like in any other totalitarian dictatorship, it will start to agitate from within. But the first thing they will do is to eliminate opposition. Now, and Doug Jones, orchestrating the Democratic defamation, and there are lawsuits pending on this behalf, and I have lawsuits pending as well against Sacha Baron Cohen, that disgusting, vile, so-called comedian that also called my client a pedophile. That's in New York City, that case. It's going forward. They will use whatever they can to destroy we conservatives, libertarians, people of faith, and others who oppose their leftist march. And they will use the social media. They will use Facebook. They will use Twitter. They will use Instagram. They will use all of these tools. And it is indeed noteworthy that my alma mater, the Antitrust Division, finally, after all these years, after it was clear that Trump was going to lose this election, finally brought a case against Facebook. They brought a previous case just a few weeks ago against Google. Why did it take them so long? It was obvious. I had filed lawsuits against these social media companies a long time ago, an antitrust lawsuit, similar to the ones that the Antitrust Division just brought. Those cases were thrown out, you guessed it, by a Trump-appointed judge, Trevor McFadden, who said my claims weren't plausible. Well, that was a perversion of the law. In fact, the law says that if there's any plausibility at all to a complaint, it has to go forward to discovery and then likely trial in front of a jury. These judges have subjugated the jury system to the ash heap of history. They think they are gods. And that's what Jefferson predicted, because being unelected and what they think is there for life, they think they can do whatever they want. And even these Trump judges, there's a chapter in my book, It Takes a Revolution, about the Trump's judges. It's called The More Things Change, the More They Remain the Same, that old French proverb. There's no difference. How did those judges get put on the bench? Through money. Money talks and nobody walks. The Republican lobbyists, the Federalist Society, put these names in front of Trump. Sign here. These are great judges. McConnell says they're great judges because, see, they're in the pocket of the Republican establishment. No less so, Justice Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett are in the pocket of that establishment. That's how they got to the court. That's what it's about. It's not about merit. It's about political connections. And that's another suggestion that I make in my book, is that we need another way of choosing judges. We need to take away their life tenure, make it clear that they serve for good behavior and can be thrown out. We need to make sure that they're not subject to believing that because they're unelectable, they're completely immune from anything. And that's another aspect of things. And I write about this in the book too. Quasi-judicial institutions, such as bar associations. Now, there's some good bar associations like the Florida Bar and the Texas Bar that win awards every year for their integrity. But there's a bar like the District of Columbia Bar, which is corrupt top to bottom. Just like they've been trying to eliminate President Trump and the people around him. And just recently, 4 presidents of the District of Columbia Bar and a associate bar counsel filed a complaint, and I don't even like him, you know that, against Blowhard Bill Barr for remarks he made on Fox News and for withdrawing the indictment of General Michael Flynn. 4 presidents of the D.C. Bar filed a complaint on that. Before that, 16 leftist law professors, including one communist that sat on a bar committee that concerned me, that recommended that I be suspended from the practice of law for 33 months. Well, that's going to be overturned. That was just a recommendation. But who sat on that committee? A communist by the name of Michael Tiger. Even in the book written by Bob Woodward, the Brethren on the Supreme Court, he acknowledges that Tiger was fired by Justice William Brennan at the suggestion of J. Edgar Hoover and others for his communist ties. I have pictures of Tiger with Ramon Castro and a thank you note from Fidel, proudly wearing a Cuba T-shirt in Cuba. This is somebody who sits on hearing committees at the bar. And then, of course, there's the chairman of the Board of Professional Responsibility who's written scathing articles disparaging Trump and praising the honesty of Hillary Clinton. And of course, everyone who's in a position of the DC bar, of a high position, nearly all of them have given large amounts of money to Obama, to Clinton, to Biden, and other leftist Democrats. So you see, it's not just the court system. It's also the quasi-court system, the bar system, that's trying to eliminate conservatives, people of faith, and others. Larry Klayman, they don't want me around because they know that I will challenge Biden. Because the first thing that I'll do in the next few weeks is to commission a citizens grand jury, and I will seek the indictment of Joe Biden and his son, Hunter, for the bribery and corruption that occurred with regard to the Ukraine, China, and Russia. Huge amounts of money, billions of dollars, ultimate sleaze. And then we will try them. Then we will seek convictions, and we will get those convictions, and we will sentence them, and we'll seek to mete out those sentences. So they don't want Larry Klayman around anymore because, you see, I'm not afraid. I'm not like Justices Gorsuch, Barrett, or Kavanaugh. I'm not going to sell out this country. I never sold the president out as others did. I believe in this country. But President Trump was not the be-all and end-all anyway. He was not the political messiah. And I can assure you, in 4 years, he won't run for president again. Things will overtake themselves. We are going into what is going to be a very, very difficult period in this country, even more difficult than it is today. Because Biden, who is now enmeshed in a scandal with his son, because, you know, his brother was involved, it's clear that his son and brother were simply surrogates to line his pockets. I mean, ask yourself the question, 47 years in the Senate with a modest salary, living in Washington, D.C., and Wilmington, Delaware, how do you become a millionaire? You become a millionaire by taking bribes. And that's what they do. They line their pockets. There are lots of ways to do that. And the FBI doesn't investigate it because there's a gentleman's agreement off the radar that they don't go after these people because the FBI is corrupt as well. The whole system's corrupt. That's what I'm saying. And consequently, because of this scandal, don't be surprised because it's already been reported that Joe Biden has had a couple strokes. Don't be surprised, even if nothing ever happens to him, by his own Justice Department. Doug Jones, this hack that beat with slander and lies Chief Justice Roy Moore in Alabama for the Senate seat in 2017, someone who claims to have prosecuted the Ku Klux Klan but didn't really, somebody who frankly is just doing the bidding of Biden. There's no risk there, but just the humiliation of this entire scandal of Biden being exposed, I think he may have a stroke and that may be it. But even if it doesn't happen, mark my words, they will poison him or do something else and he won't wake up one morning. So because at that point, Kamala Harris takes control, all the radical Muslims, radical Marxists on the Jewish left, and you know I'm Jewish, so that's not an anti-Semitic remark, I'm telling the truth. Most Jews are not that way. I've written a lot of columns about that, but they're fomenting anti-Semitism. Radical gays, lesbians, transgenders, radical feminists, radical atheists, radical Muslims, radical everything will infest this administration, and it'll be a purge. And then they'll start fighting with each other. Because ask yourself the question and read my WorldNet Daily story. What do Muslims have in common with others? You know, what do they have in common with the feminists? What do they have in common with the gays? You know, if you adhere to the strictures of the Quran, either you kill or subject to slavery gay people. That's just one example. They have no respect for African Americans either. And of course, Jews, they've been fighting with them for centuries. Fortunately, they've lost every war. They're not altogether the sharpest knife in the drawer. And besides, our God protects us, and their God is a phony God. So this is the thing that we're talking about here. We're talking about the reality and the continued existence of this country. And it's time for the American people to wake up. We can no longer sit on the deck of the Titanic listening to the music, taking advantage of the tremendous wealth that this country acquired when it was run, at least marginally, by people that weren't communists and socialists, atheists, and radicals of all stripes. This is what we face. And unless we rise up, and that's why you must read the Declaration of Independence, when in the course of human events, I'm paraphrasing, the government, the sovereign, breaks away from the people and no longer represents the interests of the people, but itself. We have a God-given right under the laws of nature and the laws of God to alter and abolish that government and to form a new government by and for the people with equal inalienable rights for everyone. And that's the thing that's going on right now, is that these radical leftists, these radical minorities of all groups, want to relegate the rest of us, and particularly white males, to the back of the bus. Doesn't matter whether it's the U.S. Senate, the House of Representatives, the presidency, the courts. There is a full court press to take this country over and put these radicals in charge. And that is why I wrote this book. And that is why this book should be number one on the bestsellers list, not the books that were written leading up to the election. Most of them ghostwritten. Hannity's book was obviously ghostwritten. Look at the horrors of the last 4 years. Vote for President Trump. A book by my former colleagues, Tom Fitton, The Horrors of the Last 4 Years, Support Judicial Watch. Well, you know what? They have about $120 million in the bank, probably more, probably about 150 right now. And they had an election integrity project. What did they do? Little to nothing, because we see what happened. But the problem is not just that. It's not enough to get documents. Documents are good, but then you got to use the documents. You got to use them in citizens' grand juries. You don't tell the government, the same people that didn't want to give you the documents in the first place, that you had to go to court to get, that to do the job that we, the people, need to do. And that's what I'm saying, is that we need to rise up. I can't say it over and over and over again enough, is that this is something which has to be done. And now is the time to wage that revolution, as Jefferson predicted. I'll be right back with the verdict section of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Stay tuned and listen carefully.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
The verdict is this, ladies and gentlemen. If there's a silver lining to what happened with the Supreme Court, is that now the total veneer that there is a savior to the American people somewhere located in either of our three branches of government, these corrupt three branches of government that I chronicle historically. And It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry, which you can purchase at Amazon.com with a donation of $50 or more off of Freedom Watch USA's website, freedomwatchusa.org. You'll get it for free. You need to take this to heart because, see, we have no protectors. And President Trump may go off and maybe he buys a cable station or continues to tweet, but history moves on. You won't be seeing President Trump again, and that's my prediction, because we're now in a far greater dire state than we were during his presidency. And we thank him for the good things that he did. There's some things he didn't do that I was constructively critical of. China, communist China. They got off scot-free. They're not even having to pay for vaccines, assuming the vaccines even work or are not dangerous, which is a big question. He also, didn't do the things that he said he was going to do. We know that the judges that he put on the bench are essentially worthless. They even betrayed him yesterday. Judges Gorsuch, Barrett, and Kavanaugh in particular, and of course John Roberts, he comes from the Bushies. We expected that. And then you've got Congress, a bunch of court jesters, fools, and criminals. And of course, the executive branch with the deep state, particularly the intelligence agencies that gather information, deep state, both Democrat and Republican, and the establishments, and beyond that, more powerful than the President of the United States, that brought Trump down and will seek to destroy anybody that gets in their path for power, fame, and money. So we, the people, are in a worse shape than we were in 1776. King George III, at least, was not a communist. At least he was not a socialist. He was not a radical Muslim. He was not a Marxian leftist Jew. He was not a radical LGBTQ. He was not a radical atheist. He was not a radical Muslim. What we have now are people much more dangerous than King George III, people that want to destroy us. And now that they've got carte blanche, you better think about your Second Amendment rights defensively, not offensively. You don't hurt anybody, but they're coming for you. They'll soon be on your front lawn like they were in Beverly Hills about a month and a half ago, wearing T-shirts, "Eat the Rich." That means kill the rich. It wasn't just about the rich. It's remove anyone who disagrees with them. And then, of course, you have the social media companies backing them up. And this so-called Justice Department brings about lawsuits after it's clear that President Trump was destroyed by these social media companies. And we, conservatives, libertarians, and people in faith, we were severely damaged as well. Too little, too late. Don't expect anything to happen with these lawsuits. They'll probably settle out with a slap on the wrist for these companies. These companies are worth trillions of dollars. They can afford a couple $1 million fine or whatever they wind up with. But in the present day Justice Department, it's not like when I was there with AT&T when we broke it up. I was on that trial team. They'll bail out. And you can be assured with a Biden and Harris administration, soon to be simply a Harris administration, as Joe Biden will probably cease to exist by one manner, shape, or form. And I don't advocate harm to him, but I think he'll die on his own, or they'll simply give him something and he doesn't wake up one morning. And even if the Republicans retain control of the Senate in Georgia, which is a big if right now, another prediction, there will be senators in Democrat states, Republican senators, who meet their end, much like Scalia did, and that Democrat governor will appoint a Democrat senator or more than one and take control of the Senate yet again. And if the Supreme Court ever rules in favor of conservatives or people of faith or whatever in a major case, read the Pelican Brief of John Grisham, a relative of Bill Clinton, where a Supreme Court justice was killed to change the balance of power. And of course, they'll try to pack the court in any event. This is what we're facing. You know what? Larry Klayman is always right. And I hate to say it, I'm right, because you know what? I tell the truth, and the truth is always right. And that's what you need to take into account. And that's why I thank Radio America for allowing me to tell the truth as I see it. And I want you to go out and get my book, It Takes a Revolution. Forget the scandal industry and let's get to work. We need to wage a peaceful second American revolution. I'll be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Until then, remember, God helps those that help themselves. He's with us if we help ourselves. God bless you, and thank you for listening to me.
At Intermountain Healthcare, you get the same healthcare partners' caregivers you trust, but you also get more, like more nationally renowned specialists. Intermountain Healthcare, formerly Healthcare Partners Nevada. Visit intermountain.com/Nevada. .com/Nevada. .com/Nevada. .com/